Thank you very much. At the end of the day, we are hoping that this public lecture will be a catalyst of action and collaboration in education.
From the oldies, harmonies that are scarce from our colonies, beats that flee through the heat of fingers striking the strings as the singers sing. The mixture of colors makes me anxious, but I swear, I know what pure grace is. We live in the world where the mindset is money. We kill bees, but ask for honey now. Why do you have to kill if you have the power to create and to sustain? The survival of the fittest mentality is telling our totality, and this must cease cause the art of life is like drawing without an eraser. Ago. Michelle Munina, Yajimia Hirowa. Adia China, dear saying, Penny become penisem, number fra at one answer sem. That's above nim in South Rodia on impini for and a tune sadidi. Besramo monimwa, me pesamidi etumonim, send me yen fremi enim. Na mini so endi enima. Na mama me yen ana minim, na mabe pim o apimenim. Media minim, being before mediama. Nim atu very ma minimum 20 no. Na nanom di me gina chempon so. Enti edu dwuma de bia na ehwemenim semi bedi enim. Onya yankama bodamo. Aso oduma nkuma nyankopon se medie edam empare me enti na efrem edam pare. Why no? Go no. Enye nana ni gati. Simpatu po a ye no osuko. Otwerempa ye twere wa ye mpan hweda. Una wo so adoto a unsu akrokre. Osi ade ye obedi atu konsro atweboana. Una wodi atwa mantrafi a woni amantrae. Abisanso amanse. Akrakra bempon. Ofumdwana na obi mfa obenkum emfa onifa. Why akukọ fufu akroma sha wonsoe. Frenchi feche freme fentemfrem. Fentemfrem o mene so no. Anya akọ afre no no. Na nka peseko. Oye hene hantafo ode ahene makọ akono na ode nkunimdie ba afie. Okatachie kantin ka kankyerɛkyerɛ. Kwabrampie sie kukramwa ode oboko ani frɛ no mene so no boko achi fina ne mene so gina fa ko frɛ no o mintiminim ayehwe wa yehu asase fifi twentwen ko ma ya ndi akoma enye wona ogina kasampre bipo so to bipo to benkroma boko da na so kroso ma mansan twe akoma twetwediye ode ojuo o mprese bitre enti osoro ama onyansatre enti enda ebebo mrane se nyansa bisa nyansa bu akwa nyansa bu so ama akwa nana onana mempre kasa na so mestra me kasa asembi na abo mipusa enti me na mana me kasa te se akasa enti adasa mestra muntie me kasa anopai ensem ehhehye mebo enyesem abo na mom esem to mebo enyesa me kwa kopie wa no mabo anampo kumasi abo aha asimpa agamese na so aha nya asen enti mesi ahwa na makosensen empenifo se nyansa e ofie enti mesra di machi bokoboko ne yenkofie na mi mbo otrim nkofie na mi nnua me nsem no otrim na dachi ebedi hu afofie me nsem mu odu mesra mo me won nsem ka enye banku na so me pese meka banku mpo meka abanim by me nsem die abawom enti mesra mo meka eya munyindi na entwimo te se eto mesra mo eya munyindi na entwimo te se akutia mesra mo munyindi na entwimo se sabi soloku me nsem no mu odu enti mesra mo momma me apotoyo wa na me mpoto me nsem no na mom enye mpoto sama mpoto me nsem na ebia na maka ne poto enti mesra mo momma me mpoto na me poto a metwi enti me ka poto kasa mesa katwi ambassadors, chancellors, scholars, ministers, your excellencies and all protocol observed. My honor to you, on reserve. Professor P.L. Lumumba, welcome to Ghana. Right from the onset, you changed your mindset to meet the target set. All this was not without frustration, but you battled every situation that seems to dwarf your progression, just for your elevation. So with a standing ovation, I give you military salutation. No allurement, no frustration. Just accept my congratulations. Africa, do you know? Do you know you are beautiful without glamour? Even in tattered clothes, your radiance penetrates walls. You stand the fairest among the seven. You are the firstborn, the elephant of the properties you have won. In whatever position the celestial attains, it increases your bounds. The land is blessed for your sake. Do you know you are an eagle, capacitated to maneuver any angle, soaring higher and higher even after battle? Why then are your sons and daughters weren't in flight? They have no odum on which to perch, neither nest in which to rose. Neocolonialism has malnourished their ideas because they feed on what they don't produce, and what they produce, they never use. If you are beyond age, avoid the debt and the loans. If you are beyond age, feed your chicks with employment because your walls are hungry for development. The eye blinks, the retina shrink. On my paper, tears sink. Why this sorrowful link? I have to ask my ink. I sense this silence of calmness. Our ancestors pressed us to be honest and fearless. When righting wrong, we need to be strong. Not only in song, cause beyond this place of wrath and tears, our faith cook no fears. So tell the north to tell the south, tell the east to tell the west, that the battle between the sun and the moon is not little. Until you give the mantle to the sun, the moon will not rattle to settle. If we are all sitting in a common boat with no life coat, then the quote we wrote from leaders we vote as comes of note. The truth will always stand tall, for lies to fall. Before the employment door, a lot of protocols. When will we shout no more? Better still, where lies our future? When the only language employees understand is who knows you, whom do you know, show appreciation, bring brown envelope, flopping and tracking integrity with inequality. The spirit of Kwame Nkrumah sleeps not, because his sons and daughters have uprooted unity and diversity and planted disunity with calamity, which fruits are beyond fanaticism, favoritism, and nepotism. If the hen ensleeves toast to friendship, in the waves of hardship, each chick swallows in tattered dreams, compelled to cross the life stream. If the head loses direction, in the absence of vision, snarls of confusion becomes the option. Where lies the humanitarian compassion we pledge to be our passion? We have lost sense of its flavor and intention, because selfishness and greediness have taken our attention. It needs not to be haggled. Don't ask Google. Our education system in any angle, painfully, wrangling and struggling, waggling as if it's not the key to development. After all, going through it, you still join the unemployment train or drive away in brain drain. Students appear like traffic lights, like doomsaw, within day and night. I think I need to pause. Free education deserves applause. Yet the quantity have taken away the quality, and that's the reality. Teachers' salary is just an insult because it lacks sauce and salt. Those who beg the future generation, why not treat them with caution? African leaders, listen to their plea. This advice is for free. Indeed, the colors of chameleon are for survival, not beautification. I agree. No wonder one who pledges against corruption now swim in its pools. Bribery and corruption take center stage in every institution, right from the home to the highest organization. Lack of vision sparks confusion in every section. Where lies our future? We choose leaders to solve problems, yet they tend to be another problem. Solve traffic jam, yet they see traffic and jump. Solve unemployment, yet they are allergic to development. Many sword cutting, yet few accomplishment. If one member of parliament earns gratia for a year is greater than one's 20-year salary untouched, then inequality in the balance. Politicians have taken the chance, amassing wealth to their own cause advance. Poverty stricken are below while they overflow, disrupting the status quo. The rich continue to be rich, building rivers from our eyes. The words of wisdom at the end is for the wise. Even Usain Bolt cannot overtake full price. We can't even buy rice. Electricity and water bills, our mega income can't suffice. The economy make hot. The poor always lose in court, while the royalties fly at the airport, exploring and creating their belly pots. Everybody is talking about human rights, but who talks about human wrongs? Where lies our future? Because this is not our nature. Inability to swallow our culture. Truth be told, our cocoa, bauxite, gold, oil, timber are all sold, yet we are poor, wallowing in cold. We are thirsty in abundance of water. Where lies our future? From leadership to fellowship, I smell no friendship. Let's change our thought level and stop blaming the devil. One thing is clear, if we change our mindset to meet the target set, development will be our asset, and our motherland's future will be without measure. Thank you.
Thank you.
A remarkable son of Africa who graces us today as a keynote speaker for this much revered public lecture. His name is well known across Africa and beyond, and so a lengthy introduction is not required. But for the sake of protocol, kindly allow me to introduce him briefly. He is a distinguished Kenyan lawyer, constitutional expert, academic, activist, and politician who has extensively been celebrated and decorated for his exceptional public service and significant contributions to academia, legal, and political spheres. Renowned across Africa and beyond for his powerful oratory, he has garnered widespread recognition for his insightful lectures on ethics, leadership, national sovereignty, and governance, solidifying his reputation as one of the continent's most influential speakers. He's a prolific writer. He's the author of several books on a wide range of subjects and has been twice recognized as one of the 100 most influential Africans by New African magazine, among other notable recognitions and accolades received. Distinguished audience, it is my pleasure to present to you today the man of the hour, a true crown jewel of Africa.
Thank you. Thank you very much. You may resume your seat. Thank you very much. Let me, for the sake of protocol, start by recognizing the Chancellor of the University of Education. Permit me also to recognize the Vice Chancellor, the representative of the Minister for Education, the representative of UNESCO here present, the student body here at the University of Education. And it's also right to say that I'm a husband of one wife, and she is present here. And to also recognize 3 young people who work with me here in Ghana and who have traveled all the way from Kumasi, that is Razak and Idrisu, and Anna Nanor, who have traveled all the way to Cape Coast. It gladdens my heart to be present here in Ghana. When I listened to my good friend, Professor Samuel, there was a sense in which he took the thunder from my presentation. And if I was a judge, as is our leadership, I would have said that I have had the advantage of listening to him and that I have nothing useful to add, save to associate myself with his views in toto. But things are being done this afternoon for the sake of protocol. And for the sake of protocol, I'll have something to say. And the thing that I will say speaks to education. You know, today, when we talk about Africa, we talk about her in the manner in which we know her after the colonial project.
So we talk about Ghana as if Ghana started existence in 1957. We talk about the 54 recognized countries as if there was no life before they regained their independence. We talk about education as if prior to the coming into the continent of the colonizers, led by the Portuguese, whose handiwork you see at Elmina, prior to the advent of the British, the French, the Dutch, the Italians, and the Germans, and even the Arabs, that we did not exist and there was no education. That is a falsehood. We know that when the Europeans were still living in darkness, here in West Africa, they were organized kingdoms. We know there were universities. We know there was education that did not entail the issuance of certificates as the badge of education. If you ever doubted this, you only have to familiarize yourself with the works of Senegal's Cheikh Anta Diop. Cheikh Anta Diop reminds us that the Greeks learned their mathematics here, that their theories of construction were learned here, that there were great artists here. Africa had a golden age. But we must never make the mistake of romanticizing the past and forgetting that we have now and the future to live for. Indeed, our very presence here under the theme Empowering Minds and Shaping the Continent for the 21st Century is a reminder to us that we have a duty to reclaim our past. And what we are doing here has been done several years before. Students of history will tell you that as early as 1906, that great South African Pixley Isaka Seme, then a student at the University of Columbia, gave an iconic speech, The Regeneration of Africa, being told, and my fear is that we appear to be believing it. We appear to be believing it because in our institutions of learning, when you look at our curriculum and you look at the curriculum of a number of countries in the Middle Ages, there is no difference. And I want to remind all of us that in the 1960s, when we were regaining our independence, and you read what was happening in different African countries, and I remind you to reread some of the thinkers of the time and the emphasis that they put on education. I was rereading for the umpteenth time the 32 speeches that were delivered by African leaders in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia, between the 23rd and 25th days of May 1963, all of them, without exception, said one thing: if we are to give meaning to our independence, then education must be our focus. So said Ethiopia's Haile Selassie. If we want to change the continent of Africa, we must give meaning to education. So said Mwalimu Julius Kambarage Nyerere of Tanzania on that day. If we are going to change my little Senegal, we must give education priority. So said Leopold Sedar Senghor of Senegal. Even the complicit Félix Houphouët-Boigny in La Côte d'Ivoire believed so. But the ultimate was, of course, the one and only, the Osagyefo. He was as eloquent as he was passionate. And when he came home, where did he not visit? If he was not at Legon, opening the University of Ghana, he was in Kumasi, creating what is now the Kwame Nkrumah University. And if he was not at Kumasi, he was here creating an institute. He was everywhere. That is why when I heard my good friend talking about free basic education, he knew that ignorance is the enemy of progress. He knew that if there was a ghost that we had to exorcise, it was the ghost of ignorance. He knew that if there was a devil that we had to pray and fast against, it was ignorance. He knew that if there was anything we had to marshal our forces against in order to exorcise the ghost of tribalism in its primordial sense, it was ignorance. He knew. Yet, several years down the line, when you ask your typical academic, when they want to say that the University of Education at Winneba is good, they say it is as good as Oxford. Why? Why can't it be just good? They must say that it is as good as Harvard, as MIT. Why must we always have this inadequacy to compare ourselves with others? We must change in order to enter the 21st century with confidence. Your leadership, who is a judge and belongs to our profession, which is one of the most imprisoned professions in Africa. When you see our judges dressing, they still dress like Father Christmas. Whoever told us that justice could only be administered when you dress like Father Christmas, I do not know. When we are citing, even deciding a matter on land law in Ghana, in Cape Coast, we still want to cite some decision that was made by some English judge in the 13th century, as if we did not have our own land laws. The time has come that we must rethink and re-enter the 21st century with laws that are known to Ghana. Ask the Ga if they do not have laws that if we refine cannot lead us into the 21st century. Ask the Akan people if they do not have such laws. Ask the Fante people if they do not. Ask the Ewe if they do not. They do. We live in a world where we are so mentally captured that those of you in the middle class, your greatest claim to fame is that my daughter can no longer speak Chui and is meant to be a badge of honor. It is a badge of complete colonial conquest. And we cannot enter the 21st century with that mindset. Go to the countries in the Scandinavia, which we can dare compare ourselves with. Go to Denmark, they teach in Danish. Go to Norway, they teach in Norwegian. Go to Sweden, they teach in Swedish. Go to Finland, they teach in Finnish. Go to Korea, they teach in Korean. Go to China, they teach in Chinese. Go to Japan, they teach in Japanese. Then they meet the world. But you and me, here I am waxing eloquent in English. Not in Kiswahili. We must revamp our curriculum. And we must have the courage to do so as I speak to you now. They are teaching Yoruba and Twi at universities outside of this continent. Why? Because language is a multi-million dollar, multi-billion CD industry. It is only us who do not know. Those of you who are religiously inclined, we are the only visitors in Jerusalem. So, brothers and sisters, we are here to remind ourselves that there is urgent business to be undertaken. We are here to remind ourselves that we had a good past. We are here to remind ourselves that others came and through slavery they disrupted that past. That they did not stop there. That they came again under colonization, and this time they disrupted us so very thoroughly and took away even the most precious of things, our confidence. That when they came here and imposed an education system, that education system had only one agenda. The agenda was to create men and women, if they were the English who colonized you, who could speak English and be their clerks. If you are colonized by the French, that you could speak French or Portuguese or Italian or Germany. When we regained our independence, we only made cosmetic changes. The time is now to go deep and remove the cosmetics and go to the fundamentals. And I'm suggesting to you that that has been done. You know, those of you who are a little older will remember that 30 years ago, China was not famous for much. They were only famous for Chairman Mao for the Long March. Today, even the toothpicks in your hotels here in Winneba are from China. Today, you go to the shops, even the inauthentic Kentes are from China. They have franchised, indeed patented Kente. You go home, your television is Chinese or Korean. You are being persuaded to use your phones. I suspect you are either using Samsung or Huawei. What did China do 30 years ago? They made a decision that we are going to change our education system. And they changed their education system. They engaged in agriculture. They engaged in technology. They engaged in medicine. They engaged in everything. And today, China is the second strongest economy in the world, with a GDP of no less than 19 trillion United States dollars. Compare that with little Ghana. Compare that with little Sierra Leone. Compare that with little Kenya, with little all these countries. What they did was to change their minds in order to change their future. And that is why when we are building roads, whether it's in Nairobi, Kenya, or in Accra, Ghana, or in Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, or in Senegal, or in Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso, or Bamako in Mali, or Harare in Zimbabwe, or in Zambia, who do we find? Chinese. Because they changed their minds. The time is now for us to change our minds. The academics who are here must agree with me that we have sinned and fallen short of the expectations of our countries. And that the time is now to say that we should be forgiven. And if our generation committed those mortal sins, you up there must not repeat those mistakes. You must not repeat those mistakes. You must use the examples and the experience so that you do not step on the landmines that we stepped on. That is why Chinua Achebe said, where are the young suckers that will grow when the old banana dies? These are old bananas. You are the young suckers. So rise up. Africa is not expecting you to engage in a perpetual state of lamentation. No, lamentation will not help you. And I want to remind you that when you are here in Ghana, don't compete with Liberia. You will beat Liberia. Don't compete with Benin. Don't compete with Togo. Don't compete, which had been generated. He was right. Those of you who are Ghanaians will remember that great Ghanaian, James Emmons Kwejiragri, ordinarily referred to as Agri of Africa. And you'll remember him reminding us that although we have courtesy of colonization been fed on chicken feed for too long, we are eagles and we can fly and soar. We are here to remind ourselves that the time is now to reimagine and to rethink Africa. We must also remind ourselves that when we talk about Ghana, we must never make the mistake of confining ourselves to the geographical space that is called Ghana. We must remember those iconic words and immortal words of the Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah. On the day when you celebrated the regaining of Ghana's independence, and you said, the independence of Ghana means nothing if the rest of Africa is not independent. And it did not just mean the continent of Africa. It meant our kith and kin in the diaspora, to be found in the Caribbean, to be found in the United States of America, to be found in Europe, to be found in Australia. He meant all of them. And today we are here to talk about rethinking of education, because we in Africa have borne the brunt of abuse. That which we had was disrupted. In Mali, which is not too far from here, in the 14th century, long before the American Declaration of Independence, long before the Universal Declaration of Human Rights, long before all these declarations that you hear about, there lived a man, Sundiata Keita. And there was a Declaration of Human Rights, the Mandian Charter. You could not write a charter if you had no education. We had education. You are not far from Benin. The walls of Benin, history will tell you, were longer than the great walls of China. The Europeans and Americans are now admitting that they stole our artifacts and they are returning them. We had education here. The Monomotapa Empire in what is now called Zimbabwe. The Akan peoples here, the Ga, the Ewe, the Mandinka, the Bambara, the Mosi, the Baganda, the Ovambo and Ovimbundu in Angola had systems of governance. That is why you say Nananum. There is wisdom in that. So when somebody comes here and tells you that we only started governing ourselves when something called democracy was introduced to us, he is a liar. And we are telling ourselves that we were disrupted. This is why we have this conversation today. The disruption was so great that today, here in Ghana, when you go to Tamale, the Moba people are to be found in Togo and to be found in Ghana. And somebody wants to tell us that the Moba in Ghana are Anglophone and the Moba in Togo are Francophone. It cannot be true. Somebody tells us that the Ovambo and the Ovimbundu in Angola are Lusophone because they were colonized by the Portuguese, and that they are kith and kin in the Democratic Republic of Congo are Francophone because they were colonized by the Belgians. It cannot be true. But the disruption was so thorough that when we regained our independence, or even before, we were told that our names were not good. So that when you are Christianized, and you are Pipim, and you went for baptism, and you renounced the devil with all his works, they also said you have to be John. Because in their scheme of things, it appears that the heavens only recognize John, not Pipim. We were told that all the education we had acquired meant nothing. So that if you are eloquent in Ga or in Chui, you are not intelligent. You are only intelligent in English. You can only be intelligent in French, in Portuguese. We now know that that is nonsense. And you know, when that great Nigerian musician in the 1980s, fella Anikula Pokuti said, "Teacher, don't teach me nonsense." He meant it. He was reminding us that we must examine our education system. You know, when the British came here, and they were establishing schools across Africa. And then when they were establishing Achimota, which is famous for producing great Ghanaians, the intention was to produce young men and women who would support the colonial empire. The intention was the same in Uganda with Budo's King's College. It was the same in Kenya with the Alliance schools. As Chinua Achebe says, the white man was clever. He came and put a knife in the things that held us together and things for education. We come here to remind ourselves that we have urgent business to be undertaken. We have urgent business to be undertaken to remind ourselves that Martin Luther King Jr. is still right. The mind is the standard of the man. Because if the mind cannot imagine, then we cannot realize our potential. So we are here to interrogate our education system. My good friend Samuel Pippin, doing the work that he came to do, to lay the ground, reminded you appropriately that we have now become famous for producing graduates in agriculture, some of whom, if you allow me a little latitude and hyperbole, cannot distinguish between a goat and a sheep. And that is why every person you ask in Africa is a farmer, but we are still importing chicken from Brazil. When I sit at the breakfast table in any African country, what am I served with? Nescafe from Nestle in Switzerland. There is not a single coffee bush in Switzerland. When I sit at the breakfast table, cocoa from Nestle, and yet Ghana is the largest producer of cocoa. What happened? We were disrupted. Pippin was right. When we want to build our roads, we have engineers, most of whom today, if you do not address them as engineers so and so, they rise up, ready to beat you up. But yet, when we are building our highway from Accra through to Winneba, through to Cape Coast, through to La Côte d'Ivoire, it is the Chinese that I see. Which calls into question, what type of engineering are we teaching? We are producing doctors, and they are good, some of them. But yet, when those of us who have the ability are sick, unless they do not know, they want to be airlifted to Dubai and to Germany. They have no faith in our medical system. When we are sick during COVID, all Africa is crying to America, oh, give us Moderna, give us Pfizer, to the Russians, give us Sputnik. We are crying. Yet we have universities with professors in medicine. You know, there is a missing link somewhere. Until the day we have the courage to find that missing link, then we are not preparing for the 21st century. You know, sometimes When I think about Ghana, I think about Kwame Nkrumah. And you think about his books, Dark Days in Ghana, Letters from Conakry. And the Osagyefo is so close yet so far. His ideas dead. His books banned until Ignatius Kutu Acheampong comes. It is only in the year 2013 that Nkosazana and Dlamini Zuma, the then chair of African Commission, writes a letter of apology to Kwame Nkrumah. I urge you to read it. He tells Kwame, you are right. Everybody was wrong when you said we must unite and change our education system in order to compete. That is Nkosazana and Dlamini Zuma. Today, the Osagyefo is here telling us, let us change. He said it in 1963 in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. He said it in 1964 in Cairo, Egypt. He said it in 1965 in Accra, Ghana. And on 6th day of March 1997, on the occasion of the celebration of 40 years of independence of Ghana, Kambarage Nyerere himself also apologized to Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah. He said, you are right, we were wrong. Today I'm saying that we cannot remain imprisoned in history and lamentation. That is why it is still true for you Ghanaians. Nkrumah is dead, but Nkrumah never dies. And the reason why he never dies is that his ideas are evergreen. Who among you here is courageous enough to stand up and contradict me when I say what we are saying here was said by Kwame Nkrumah in 1955? Who among you? Who among you here is courageous enough to tell me that Nkrumah did not think about education of a different kind when he was instituting the university at Legon? Who amongst us? That he was right when he established the Kwame Nkrumah University in Kumasi, that he was right when he instituted the institute out of which grew the University of Education at Winneba. Who amongst you can contradict me? So if he was right, he did not have the advantage of the technology that you have. No. There was no WhatsApp, there was no Twitter or X, there was no Instagram, there was only Telegraph. But he was able to marshal the entire black community throughout the world and give meaning to education. What can you and me not do if we mean to do it? So you young men who are present here, don't tell me Nkrumah was old. Nkrumah was just slightly older than you. If you look at his cabinet, some of them were in their 20s. It is not formal education that maketh a man or a woman. The great Indian sage Raja Gopalachari says, education is not merely attending institutions and acquiring certificate. He says, you may have gone to school, but has school gone through you? This is the question. So, ladies and gentlemen, here today, we are here to tell ourselves ad nauseum that the mother continent can change, and she will change. She will change. And when I look at the future and I hold all factors constant, I see an Africa whose young men and women are educated and their education is about innovation and invention. I see such an Africa. I see an Africa whose sons and daughters will be leaders in cryptocurrency. I see that Africa. I see an Africa where all the cars running from Addis Ababa in Ethiopia to Banjul in the Gambia will either be made in Togo, Burkina Faso, or Uganda. I see that Africa. See an Africa where the Ghanaian doctors who are running hostels in the United States and in the United Kingdom will have the courage to come back home because there is something called a hostel where they can do their trade. I see such an Africa. I see an Africa where we will have our own satellites that are launched next to Elmina Castle, and they'll go out there in the orbit, and we shall not be depending on Vodafone. I see such an Africa. I see an Africa where we will be able to produce enough rice, enough cocoa, and enough gold, and we will process it here, and that you will be selling it to Nairobi, Kenya, Dar es Salaam in Tanzania, and it will not be necessary to look to the outside world. I see such an Africa. See an Africa where, apart from Kiswahili, one of the languages that will be spoken will be Chui or Ebe or Ga. I see such an Africa. That Africa is possible. Box. I see an Africa where we will give practical meaning to Africa Agenda 2063, not merely as a point of reference, but as a practical reality. I see an Africa where there is Africa Continental Free Trade Area, and the majority of students here at Winneba will be drawn from Togo, from Benin, from Gabon. I see an Africa where our kith and kin in Martinique, in Guadeloupe, and Barbados, Antigua, and Barbuda will be coming here. I see that happen. That is why, when I have such foresight, wisdom not only requires but dictates that I stop. Because going beyond that would be flogging a dead horse. I see an Africa that gives meaning to those words of the Osagyefo Kwame Nkrumah, written in his book, Africa Must Unite, that Africa needs a new citizen. Are you those citizens that the Osagyefo was talking about? Are you? Do you have values? Do you have passion? Do you have dedication? Do you have love? Do you have imagination? Do you have the spirit of innovation? Do you have the spirit of invention? If that is true, then I have no fear for Africa. So go out there and amaze Africa. God bless you. Wow.
Thank you so much, UEW Departmental Wings Band. Ladies and gentlemen, now I have the singular honor.
The Chancellor of the University of Education, Winneba, Nei Gati, Vice Chancellor, the Principal Officers of the University, distinguished guest speaker, the representative of the Minister for Education, my dear friend, Dr. Clement Park, Deputy Minister for Education, staff of the university, students, ladies and gentlemen, you all agree with me that we've had a very academic lecture by Dr. Samuel Granting Pipim, clearly indicating the failures of our educational system and highlighting some of the new developments that are coming up. And we had a passionate exposure by PLO Lumumba. Thank you very much. For me, as an avowed Nkrumahist, I stand tall today. And this is a gentleman from Kenya, Stoling. That is why they said a prophet is not honored in his own country. Ghana is 68 years. And yet, I don't believe any of the universities have a course on Kwame Nkrumah. Go to Stanford University, they run programs on Kwame Nkrumah. 16 of Kwame Nkrumah's books are not mandatory reading in any university in this country. Likely outcome of this public lecture is going to be research abounds that children born should be educated at home with their mother tongue and in school with their mother tongue. The research even says that up to probably the age of 8, and therefore in Ghana's school system, class 1 at 6, 7, 8, class 3, you start introducing English as a second language. What that does for you is that every word that the child knows in the mother language immediately gets translated into English. If I ask all of you here, what is your vocabulary? All right? What numbers can you give me? This morning in the conference room, I said that in 2002 or 2001, when the Kufuor government came in, the first Minister for Education was Professor Christopher Ameyaw Kumfi. I met him, and he comes from a tradition that believes that English should be the medium of training right from, age 1. So I said, my primary school teacher's vocabulary was 40. And 40 included 2-letter words and 3-letter words. And how much of that was he going to hand over to me? Let me be charitable, 27 is to it, but that does not make English language. The other thing I want to say is that if I ask how many of you lived with your grandparents, there'll be a lot of silence in this room. Unfortunately, in our culture, if you're old and poor, you're a witch or a wizard. And families today shun the company of grandparents. But that is where the knowledge is. And I would say that good old the name is just gone, who said that you challenge indigenous knowledge at your peril. Indigenous knowledge is knowledge. This is Dr. Okuampofo. Indigenous knowledge is knowledge that has stood the test of time. If you learn from your grandparents, The stories you're told is about heroes and heroines in your culture. That is how you build confidence. You don't build confidence by learning somebody's heroes and heroines. They don't look anything like you. But here we are. Many people never met their grandparents, never shunned their grandparents, never learned the heroes and heroines of their cultures. Many of us have very interesting stories to tell. And yet, in this country, reading is virtually nil. There are university students who are graduating who have never read a book from page 1 to the end, particularly if it is not in their subject area. They all read handouts and notes, and that certainly doesn't make a university graduate. At least in every semester, there should be compulsory reading material. Even in medicine, you must read the history of medicine. You must read pretty much everything. We have little knowledge, we have little language, and therefore a lot of us can't speak. Not surprising, the MC said, you teach and you ask a question and everybody is quiet. If we started a program, and I'm saying that, look, PLO felt that the young people here have got a changed mindset and can change this country. I totally disagree. They have come along the same route that I came through. I'm 71. I can't change my spouse today. Most of you can't change your spouse either. Brain, by age 2, is mature. What you do is how to wire the brain. And you wire the brain through your senses, through what you see. The child is on the mother's back. They go to the farm. The only colors they see on most of our farms is brown and green. Nothing else. They don't see any other colors. Turquoise. No, nothing excites them. What do they smell? What do they hear? What kind of music do they hear? They're not even playing a match they did to them. Children, the senses virtually are starved of information. And that is the route through the wiring system. So I say that most Ghanaians are single-phase wired. In a house, you can have one-phase wiring or three-phase wiring. Three-phase wiring, if one phase goes off, the others are there. Most Ghanaians are one-phased wired. And therefore, the ability to lateralize and really comprehend what goes on around them is really limited. So we must begin early childhood education. I don't believe that if you taught a child Proverbs at age 2 or age 3, the child will not understand, particularly in the language that is spoken at home. But if you start teaching A is for apple and B is for banana, then you're doing what is called linear teaching. Everybody is a child prodigy, but that have not been exposed. So I want us in this empowering minds to say that this is the university from which the change must start. I want to hear University of Education, Winneba, say that up to the age of 8, backed by research, education must be by mother tongue. And by 8, English as a second language should be introduced in class 3, primary 3. That is when English should be. So that immediately that child transfers every word he or she now knows in his native language into English. And within 1 year, the vocabulary of 9-year-old Ghanaians would amaze all of you. would amaze all of you. Then the next is reading. If people cannot read about people who have been successful in their culture, in their country, and even beyond, they don't build the confidence. And reading is virtually almost taking, imbibing somebody else, knowledge. So if you don't read, you know nothing. In this country, we do not read. It's almost as if you read, you are wasting your time. Because you only need your teacher's notes to pass the exam. But if we made compulsory reading every semester, the amount of knowledge that will be garnered will be very impressive. And therefore, if we're going to shape futures for the 21st century, then I dare all of us that all of us past the age, having entered primary school, we have lost the boat. We have. We are not confident. We are not dignified in ourselves. And that is why corruption is probably the number one thing that happens in this country. Because everybody just wants money. Money is the only currency that an uncultured, an unvalued human being wants. If you value, if you have dignity, if you have confidence, money is not your currency. So we've lost it. But if we've got to regain it, then it starts from the KG and the primary school. How can we do this? Currently, there is a process going on in this country looking at education at all stages. How is UEW positioned to influence what is happening?